Welcome to something a little bit different today. So instead of taking a picture and over editing it like crazy, as I usually do, I'm actually gonna take this raw file right here and turn it into a very subtle black and white picture like this. And for this video, I want to mainly focus on exposure and the mood rather than on making a huge difference. So if you're not interested in that, that's completely fine, just check back another time. But let's get started here by turning the picture into black and white. Also, I definitely want to make this a panoramic shot. And there are definitely a lot of opportunities. I kinda could go for the classical rule of thirds way, but it's almost a bit too much foreground. So what I think I'm gonna do is actually set the aspect ratio to 3:1 here, and just have really a lot of sky. This is going to be mainly about negative space and not so much about the proper foreground. So the idea that I actually had here originally is that the sky is of course very grey and you have this snow on the foreground, so I wanted to make it really blend in and almost make the sky and the foreground, well, not indistinguishable, but a little bit less obvious. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab a graduated filter, drag it over the foreground just like that, and go a little bit into the minus exposure, probably a bit into the minus contrast as well. And you know, I just want to come a little bit closer to the sky. It doesn't have to blend in perfectly, but I just want to make this edge a little bit softer and maybe just make it look something like that. So from before that one to after, a little bit closer. So the next thing that is very important to me is the exposure difference. And what I thought here is I'm gonna grab another graduated filter, go into the plus exposure, not quite that much, but maybe about, half of a stop, a little bit more, and then just drag it over the right side of the picture and make a very, very soft feather. So the idea here is that the right side is much brighter than the left side and kind of the tree in the middle dividing the two. So just gonna angle it like this, and this is really trial and error. This is the first time I'm editing this photo as well, but I'm gonna do the same thing over the other side, just of course with minus exposure, and it looks quite interesting. So let's see how far I can push it without overdoing it. Maybe even a softer edge here. And yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's just quickly compare again, before, after. Much more interesting already. I think I'm gonna take a break from the graduated filters for now and go into the basics adjustments. Now, let's see, I think... shadows, I'm just gonna leave them at 0. Same with the highlights, and, well, maybe I'm even gonna make them a little bit brighter. And let's see how the whites look. Also a little bit up with those, but nothing crazy. Then contrast. Now I could of course make this a very contrasty picture, make it something like this. But this is really not what I'm going for, so I want to keep it relatively far away and distant and just soft. I really want to go for that kind of look. So a bit into the minus contrast, maybe even into the plus blacks. And with the clarity, I think overall clarity, I'm gonna go a little bit into the minus. But I'm right away gonna grab a graduated filter, this time just with a little bit more minus clarity, and drag it over the right side. Now, brightness tends to work a lot better with clarity than darkness, because it just makes it seem softer, the whole light. So I've just added a little bit over the right, and you know, you might be able to tell that this isn't a normal tutorial. I'm really just kind of sharing my thoughts instead of telling you this is how you can get a certain look or effect. So anyways, going on with the clarity, color temperature actually does have an effect in black and white pictures as well. So you can play around with that. And maybe I'm even gonna bring it a little bit more towards the cool side here. because it makes it even more faded out. Yeah, that looks pretty cool actually. The other obvious thing would be exposure, and once again, I don't want to make this dark and gloomy, even though you could definitely go for that, but I'd rather have a very faded out look. Now I might have to enable the clipped warning here. In the top right you have the histogram, and you can just click on this little box, and as long as you don't clip anything, it's all fine. But as soon as you do, it will show in bright red, so really great if you don't want to clip anything at all. Now the exposure in itself is a pretty good exposure. It doesn't really need any minus or plus, but once again, because I want to go for this very artistic look, I do think I'm actually going to push it quite far into the plus. So about a stop actually. Okay, so let's just quickly compare. So I see, yeah, this really looks quite different. I love the look here, especially on the tree. Yeah, okay, so let's keep on going with the total curve. I really don't think I'm gonna have to do too much here. Maybe a little bit more into the plus highlights to have the right side even brighter. And with the lights themselves, well, maybe even a bit into the minus. You know, it doesn't really play a huge role. It could be as much into the minus as much into the plus. It wouldn't affect the picture that much. But while I'm at it, might as well also play around with it real quick. So going down, there's not really too much I can do. HSL tool, not really of interest here. Split toning, you could add some color here, even in black and white, and that kind of looks actually pretty cool, or maybe for a bluish look, but I think I'm just gonna keep it real black and white here. So to the detail, not really something I'm worried about. Lens corrections, not very important either. Transform, nope. Effects, maybe I'm gonna try out some vignetting here. But that's about all I'm gonna do in terms of the global adjustments. So let's just see. Yeah, like if I wanna add vignetting, I definitely will have to bring the midpoint closer to the center. And I'm definitely gonna make the feather a lot softer. This actually doesn't look too bad. Keep in mind this is at minus 100. I always like to do that because I can much better see what the midpoint and feather actually does. But then I of course want to keep it at a reasonable level, and let's just see what it looks like at 0. Yeah, I think about minus 35 would work quite well here. From before to after, it doesn't have a huge difference in this kind of picture, but if you zoom in, you will be able to see that it just looks a little bit more natural, and especially on the left side, yeah, it does make it a lot darker on the left. On the right, it's not such a big deal because it's already very bright, but on the left, it does do the pictures really great favor. So what I think I'm gonna do is say that I'm done in terms of the global adjustments here, so let's further adjust all of the local ones. Now with the graduated filter, it would probably make sense that the bottom is dark, you know, something like this right here. But I think I'm actually gonna go into the opposite and make the sky dark. So let's flip that around, and I always, or a lot of times, like to start off with kind of an overdone adjustment, so I can really see the angle and the effect and the soft gradient and so on. And maybe even a little bit more like this. Yeah, I think I'll have to even bring that further to the right. That actually looks really good right here. That's a perfect angle in my opinion for a soft graduation from the darkness from the top left all the way to the left side of the tree. So once again, not want to go that far here, but maybe actually about, yeah, I think about a full stop. Let's see what, well, actually maybe at 1.5 stops. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna do quite a lot, but I do think it's a bit too much. So let's see here, about -1 stop. Let's see if I can go further. I do think about 1.5 stops into the minus is about as far as I want to go here. And Yeah, okay. I'm always taking another glimpse at the picture and not worry too much about the adjustments, but rather taking my time. And I do think this is the best way to edit a photo and to really get the best result at the end. Because if you're really just, going from one place to the other quick, you'll just miss opportunities because you won't have the time to really try out things. But going further with the graduated filters, now I do think I'm actually going to make the bottom a bit darker. It must be quite hard to see the graduated filters here on the bottom because everything is white. So once again, I'm going to go quite far into the minus exposure. And this time I really only want to have a little bit of an angle towards the left here. And let's see, kind of a soft edge, although not something crazy. And I just want to make, especially the bottom left a bit darker, but not as far as I went in the previous, -2 filter, but just about -1, or maybe not even, -2/3 of a stop. Yeah, that looks pretty cool actually. So as we can see in the histogram in the top right here, there's really plenty of space until anything is clipped. So I'm also going to take another plus exposure filter, and this time really a super soft edge. This is quite crazy, and I'm going to angle it like this and just bring it over the top right. In terms of the graduated filters, maybe I'm even going to grab another one. I promise you I'm soon done with those, and go a bit further into the minus exposure, although really just about half of a stop or so, and make the graduation very soft. So that actually looks pretty cool. It's very natural looking, but at the same time you do see that there is a massive exposure difference. Here is before any, and very dull and very even in terms of the lighting, and afterwards there is a clear differentiation from the right side of the tree being very bright and the left side of the tree being relatively dark. So it's really, I've got like 8 filters here, but all of them have a relatively subtle adjustment and quite a soft feather, so you have to do that and really use one another in combination to get a very soft gradient and differentiation in terms of the lighting in the entire picture. Because if I would just go into the minus exposure like this, you can clearly see that there is something done and it just doesn't look right to me. So yeah, I do think that looks pretty cool though. So what I'm gonna do now is quickly grab the radial filter and go into the minus shadows, because I do want to make parts of this tree a little bit darker. Even though, I want to keep this entire picture very washed out and distant and hazy, I really like that. I still want to make some part of this tree a little bit darker. And the obvious thing is, of course, to put it towards the left, because you don't want to, have the bright side on the right and then suddenly the tree on the right is darker. It just doesn't really work that way, so I'm just kind of gonna angle it like this towards the left. By the way, you can also hold down the Alt key to make just one side of a filter bigger. So that's great if you really want to fine adjust and fine tune everything. And just to be clear here, you might see this huge filter, but the feather is at 100. So if I show you that with crazy minus exposure, the actual effect is actually just in about 1/3 of the middle of the entire filter. So I'm going to reset the exposure though, because I don't want to go too far. I want to keep this entire picture very subtle and not too overdone. And from before to after, it's actually quite a big difference if you consider how soft and kind of not crazy this picture is. Definitely does a great job here. If I'm honest though, I don't really see any other opportunity for a radial filter here, so yeah, I do think this was pretty much the only thing that was really needed. So what I'm gonna do now is my last and final step probably, which is the spot removal tool. And before you go away, this is actually not for removing spots, this is for placing the people in a little bit more of an interesting place. So this guy on the right especially, I think he's just a little bit too close from the right. So what I'm gonna do here is go to the spot removal tool, go to feather about 50, opacity around 100, and the size just about as big as that guy would be. So yeah, something like that. Now let's zoom out again and really find a nice position for him. Probably around here should work just fine. And I'm just gonna add a spot removal thing right here. By default, Lightroom is trying to find something to fit in here. So you could right click and select new source and try to find something better. But we're not trying to fix anything here. Instead, I'm gonna take this manually, the spot removal thing, and just drag it all the way over the person. And look at that, we've just cloned somebody. But you might not want to have a clone in your picture. If you do, then that's great, but it kind of looks a little bit weird if you have two of the same people. So what I'm gonna do now is first of all make sure that it really looks nicely positioned. And then I'm gonna grab another spot removal tool and just remove the old guy. Now what's funny is that the effect of the old spot removal tool will actually not get overwritten. So as you can see, this is the spot removal tool and this is the source we've selected, which is now completely empty, but it still has that information from that guy or person. So it's pretty cool, very easy to do, especially in a scene like this where you pretty much just have white. And I might also make that with this person right here. So let's zoom out again, find a nice place here, and I do think, yeah, I can't go quite too far to the right because then the left would be too empty, but just around here should work. So adding another spot removal tool, putting it over the other person, and look at that, another perfect clone. Now, just to try something a little bit funny, let's add another one and also add that over the previous person. So now we've got 3 of the same people on the left here. This would actually be pretty funny in a print or so when you don't really notice it. But anyways, let's delete that one right here and go over here, delete the original person and see how it looks. It does a pretty good job, probably because it's such an easy scene with pretty much just white. And yeah, that looks a lot better. I really like that much more. Maybe I'm actually gonna kind of fine-tune that person right here. That's another great thing. You can just kind of bring them to the left, and I bet you a lot of people have not even known that and have thought you would need Photoshop for that. But if you do it in a very simple way, you can definitely do that with just a spot removal tool. I do think that I'm done with this picture though. There's really no other edit that I could see fit at the moment, so let's just call it quits and go into the history. So this would be the raw file right here, and it actually doesn't look too bad in itself. It's quite interesting, but I definitely especially prefer the aspect ratio, the panoramic look here, but also the very soft lighting as well as the exposure difference definitely make the picture for me. I would really appreciate if you could give me any sort of feedback on this video, either by liking, disliking, or leaving a comment or whatever, because it's very hard for me to judge whether this video is interesting, because it's so different from everything else that I do. It's very slow, not a super huge difference, and overall just a different style. So if you actually like this and would like to see more of them, in addition to my regular kind of crazy edit tutorials, then just let me know and I'm happy to make these, because it's quite refreshing to get a little bit of a different edit style and, you know, take things slowly and really not worry too much about making a picture look crazily, you know, super flashy, but just making it look very moody and kind of artistic or whatever. Anyways, I'm really just rambling at this point if I wasn't already previously, so I'm just gonna thank you very much for watching and keep on editing great pictures.